Show. What's going to be the style? Fox they're big on either really heavily serialized shows, really heavily procedural shows, but it's really hard to mix the two. Like, what direction is Terra over the
It'll be a little bit of both. I mean, it'll be close-ended episodes that have a beginning, middle, and end. And you'll see that in the 2-hour pilot. I mean, each hour of the 2-hour pilot could stand alone as an hour, and yet there are threads with the characters' stories that will carry along, because the show's so large in scope that you're always going to have something that's going from episode to episode that you can't wrap up in one episode. But primarily, it'll be close-ended.
And does the network, it's hard because like Fringe, it's kind of like you jump in now and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, it will not be. I mean, I think something that the writers were really trying to avoid was the Fringe Lost dynamic of like, this is a cult thing for people who will only watch it every week. It is not like that at all. I mean, it's very much like any classic television show that we've all loved in the past, where like you can just turn it on and watch an hour. And part of what makes that work so well is the cast is so fantastic and accessible that, like West Wing or like Cheers or any ensemble piece that you've really loved, it's like that. You'll just turn it on and watch them for an hour. It's just fantastic.
Do you have any concerns about doing a show of this scope on TV instead of doing it as like a film? It's big?
No, it's funny. The hard thing was doing the pilot because we had to start from scratch. And a lot of what went on was trying to set the show up in Australia and build the show, build Terra Nova in Australia. It took months. That's why the show pushed and pushed. And then getting down how we were going to do the effects and the dinosaur effects has been very complicated. And also, we've taken approaches that will work in series that were very groundbreaking, and that has slowed things down a little bit too. And that's why we've now pushed the fall, because some of the effects will not be ready in time. Because they're complex. I mean, we're doing feathered dinosaurs. I mean, people with features are doing feathered dinosaurs, and so it's how do we do that and repeat it? And so there's been a lot of R&D, and it's really getting ironed out now. So it'll go forward. Like anything, it can't be harder than the first season of Originals.
On the production level of the pilot, how, because you're setting it up, you're setting up the world, how insane was that for you as a director to try to pull that together?
Well, it was a huge opportunity, and it was a great thrill, because I mean, I got to do 2149, which is sort of our version of Blade Runner. I mean, Jim Shannon is a narcotics cop in Chicago in 2149, so and it's dystopian, it's overpopulated, it's overpolluted, and so that was a blast to create. And then you go back to one of the most beautiful eras in the Earth's history, and you're creating that, and you get to go to Australia to do it. And then we were building vehicles and guns and props and armor and sort of the Halo aspect of it, which is just really the gamer aspect of it, which is designing the world down there in Terra Nova, what everything looks like, and what's the technology for 2149 they brought with them, and how is it being used. So it was a blast.
You talked about this being kind of a dystopian reality and then going back in time to correct that, make that correction. We don't want to give any spoils away, obviously, but what's the plan?
Right. Sure. Well, the thing about it is it's a very contemporary show in that, as much as it sort of got a gamer lens to it, it's about people who are being faced with major ecological disasters, marital disasters, financial disasters, who have to start over again. And they don't have a choice, they have to start over again. They have to do something. And that's really what it is at its core. And it gets very riveting. You realize about 10 minutes in, you're like, God, this is now. And you get really pulled in. And one of the great things about what we're going to show today is, for the first time, we're going to show 3 minutes that shows what the show is. And all the time travel and dinosaur questions, I think, are going to calm down, because then everyone's actually going to be able to talk about Terra Nova as it is. And it's a great teaser, because it's not a smoke and mirrors teaser. It's like in the script. It's like what the show is.
But the idea is that they can rewrite all of human history by connecting with the environment, or is that is that a misperception?
No, it's actually very much the International Space Station. They found a place to go where they stand a chance at figuring out how to save the future, and also save the human race by migrating there and starting over again. So it doesn't get into the history yet. That'll be later in the first season. There's no time in the pilot, because of what they go through, to deal with the time travel. The time travel is a very, very small part of it. It's much more about what happens if you get thrust back under very dramatic circumstances. And when I'm translating, what I'm saying is there's a story. There's a very intense story with the family, and you're following that, and then the pilot's over. And so there's plenty to do in the series.
There's also a big asteroid coming.
Yeah, but in 2 million years, and as I
What
said,
if the show's successful?
I promise you it won't run for 20 years.
So you worked with Aaron Sorkin and David E. Kelly and those kind of shows, and then you did Fringe. You're moving more toward the big scope. What was your initial reaction when you got this script compared to your previous experiences directing?
Just excitement. I mean, we all had the same reaction. It's funny, when we were shooting in Australia, we all had the same reaction to it. It's a really cool idea. It was a very good script. And again, this is something that people don't know because there's been all the back talk and gossip about the show. And it was like, oh my God, this is damn near impossible to do. How could we possibly do this? And when do I start? That was basically it.
You said that you've got like a long-term story plan in mind. Do you see this as a show like Lost or Battlestar Galactica that has a specific end, or do you think it'll be more open-ended?
It'll be more. It's more open. I mean, the first season is they've largely mapped out the first season, but it's more open-ended because it's like any show I've ever been on, and I'm sure this is somewhat true behind the scenes of Galactica and other shows, and that you have to get through most of the first season before you can really know confidently what. It's like X-Files. I feel like I remember them saying on X-Files, like, we didn't really know what the show was going to be until like the 18th episode or something like that. And I've seen that happen often. But they certainly have a map for the first season. That's fantastic.
You mentioned all the talk about the show. Does the buzz concern you? Is it people will tune in because of all the talk about it? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I don't know. It can't concern you because you're in the trenches making it. And also, the thing about this was that so much of what I heard was wrong that it was like, oh, okay. I mean, like, we pushed because there's trouble. Well, we pushed because the sets weren't going to be ready.
Yeah.
And there was we had like a really calm meeting talking about it, and like a month later, there's this thing in the press, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The sets weren't going to be built. And when you see Terra Nova, you'll go, oh, that's what they were building. Because we built a town. And not only that, but we built vehicles and the way everyone says, because nothing, it's like a period piece.
Yeah.
There's nothing that exists for Terra Nova that we can use in the show.
So when the show gets picked up, not if, will you be directing future episodes?
I'd like to. I'd like to.
So, Brannon, this is now
Hi guys.
Welcome.
Sorry to have to barge in.
Time travel is weird.
Time travel questions again?
As long as you don't ask about time travel. No, I'm kidding.
He gets weary.
No. I love time travel.
Well, I was just saying, as soon as they see the season where they'll stop asking all the time.
Well, the time travel, it's a fundamental part of the show, and we will answer there are basic questions like what's the plan? Are they changing the future? Are they, and the answer to that is, we will answer those questions right away, but they're going to be answered in a slightly unorthodox way that we think is really cool, a slightly new approach to time travel that will play out in the series and twists and turns. So we're hoping. So it sounds like a dodge, but it's not. We want you to watch the show and check it out, because once you see how it's being handled, you'll want to know more. Having said that, time travel, as Alex points out, it catapults the show, but it's not what the show's about. This isn't going to have. It will have some cool moments and paradoxes and stuff, but it's just not. It's not a quantum leap, It's not.
Well, it's like the DeLorean in Back to the Future. It helps us get through time, and then there's the whole rest of the movie.
And it's cool, and the DeLorean was cool.
Yeah,
But
it's very cool. I mean, what we're doing, but
What's Steven Spielberg's involvement, like outside of kind of letting his name and I'm sure
he's been
is he
involved.
very hands-on?
Day one. From day one, he wanted to know what he's been involved in the conception of the show in a broad-based way, and adding all sorts of. He has a real genius for adding kind of verisimilitudinous details. I don't know if that's a word. Like people from the polluted future, ironically, come to a place with clean air and suffocate. because they get oxygen poisoning, and our